Counter-Strike, but shorter. During the CS2 beta, Valve made the somewhat controversial decision to switch the max rounds per half from the 15 we were used to on CSGO to 12. The max rounds in regulation is now 24 instead of 30, so the game in theory is 20% shorter. Just like your keyboard's lifespan after dying to a P90. Without further ado, let's talk about the arguments against MR12. With each game being 20% shorter, we spend less time in game and watching it and more thinking about playing it. Playing it is less of an issue because you can just re-queue, but pro games being 20% shorter means we'll have to find something else to do all weekend. What, we're going to go out and have a social life? I don't think so. The halves being shorter means that each team has less time to impose their will on either side, which potentially lowers the skill ceiling. Weird gimmicks that might steal a round weren't that important in MR15, but in MR12 they become huge. And you might only get 1 or 2 AWPs a half if it's a particularly bad game. Whether or not you think pistol rounds are random or display less of a team's ability than normal rounds, the difference they now have on the half is colossal. When you lose the pistol on CSGO, or I guess lost the pistol on CSGO, it would lead to a 2-0 lead and then you'd get a mediocre buy, lose that, it's probably 4-0. In Go, you shall have 11 rounds to adjust, recover and put up a decent half. In 2, you have 8 rounds. That is significant. Also, is it really a bad thing for pistol rounds to matter more? Being good at pistol rounds isn't the same as being good at gun rounds, but it's still an important skill and a very observable one. It's not like they're random like people sometimes try to claim. If they were, ZywOo wouldn't have a career 1.41 rating on pistol rounds. Nico has a 1.25, m0NESY 1.24, Simple a 1.22. There might not be the same skill in terms of dealing with executes and utility, but the best players do still shine in pistol rounds. Comebacks feel a little bit less epic when there's fewer rounds to play with, especially as some of them will be against ecos, and it just kind of feels like you're being shortchanged. For a real example of how it can potentially change the scene, the ENCE vs FaZe game, the legendary one, would have ended 13-11 to ENCE in regulation. Of course, that can be seen the other way. There will be games that could have been overtime bangers that ended in regulation in MR15. In MR12, maybe those super close crazy rounds become OT rounds, and that is, well, maybe even better. When it comes to playing a bunch of games in a day, something we would never do instead of doing work, of course, MR12 is really nice. If you don't like the map your teammates divined for you, you don't have to deal with it for as long. If you just want to play 3 games back to back, it's not such an undertaking. If you've got an hour and a half to spare, you might be able to get 2 games in where previously you'd only have really gotten 1 in safely. The shorter time could potentially lead to higher viewership and higher retention rate. If people don't think they have to put aside 4 hours to watch a series, they might be more interested. They also might not, mind you. CSGO games sometimes took ages, and shortening that isn't a bad thing really. With how the economy has changed in recent years, terrorists rarely have to eco anymore, and the Galil is so disturbingly cheap and so strong. With how teams save, we're getting more and more gun rounds, or at least pseudo buys, reducing the impact that the economy has, meaning that reducing the max rounds doesn't have that much impact as long as you save properly. In theory too, with the game being shorter, each round means more, and we might see more teams pressured into retakes, i.e. fewer saves. 20% less game time sounds pretty damn good to us. With all that out the way, you are now armed to the teeth, ready to go to war on social media with people on the other side to whatever you believe. Would you prefer to have MR15 back, or is MR12 feeling nice to you? Let us know as ever.